we are talking about the birth of the dark god, Yaldabaoth. It's a good day. We're talking about Gnosticism. We just hit 1 million followers on Facebook. It's good. Things are good. So, if you missed last week's talk, I'm going to give you a little recap right now so that you understand what we're talking about. Now, so we talked about, we're reading from the Secret Gospel of John. And we talked about how in the beginning, before space and time, before anything at all, there was just mind, pure mind. That's it. And that mind began to do what a mind does. It generates thoughts. And it began to generate and structure itself. And all these different thoughts were working together in symmetry, in harmony, in perfect pairs, and perfectly ordered, as a mind should be, unified and ordered. But there was one thought, Sophia, wisdom, and remember that we are talking about these different beings as though they are beings. We're giving them names, things like Sophia, but remember that these are elements of the divine mind. So when we talk about Sophia, Sophia is wisdom. That aspect of the divine mind. You know, there's a lot of different aspects that we talked about. There's wisdom, there's understanding, there's foreknowledge, all these different aspects of the divine mind. Well, wisdom, or Sophia, decided to have an independent thought, to think for herself. And she did this in two ways. One, she decided to think without permission from the One. And imagine if one of your thoughts decided to take on a life of its own and do its own thing without your command. Well, that would be odd, right? So, Sophia, wisdom, began to think a thought for herself without permission from the One, acting out of harmony. And in addition to that, Sophia acted without her other pair, without her partner. So in the divine mind, all these structures are in pairs and they work together. They are symmetrical. And so Sophia, though, acted on her own without her partner. So it was asymmetrical. So now we have Sophia thinking on her own, asymmetrically, without permission, and this is going to be ultimately what gives birth to Yaldabaoth. And this is the fracturing of the divine mind. Again, imagine an ordered, structured mind beginning to lose sanity as its thoughts begin to act independently. It happened that the Aeon Sophia intended to think for herself, began to think for itself. And she intended to reveal an image from herself, and to do so without the consent of the spirit and without the assistance of her counterpart. So without the spirit's consent and without the knowledge of her partner, she brought it into being. And something imperfect came out of her, different in appearance from her. Because she had created it, without her masculine counterpart, she gave rise to a misshapen being unlike herself. Sophia saw what she desired produced, and it changed into the form of a dragon with a lion's head and eyes flashing lightning bolts. And we can see a depiction of Yaldabaoth, that creature that is shaped like a dragon or a serpent with a lion's head. And what Yaldabaoth is an asymmetrical thought. And as we'll see, because remember, everything is mind. Everything is an emanation from the divine mind. So Yaldabaoth is still a thought of the divine mind, but it is a thought produced from an aspect of the divine mind that's thinking out of unity and out of symmetry. And so from Sophia's independent thought, from wisdom's independent thought, comes an asymmetrical thought. And as we'll see, Yaldabaoth does not know about many of the other divine beings. It doesn't know about the one. And so it thinks that it is an independent being. And again, if you imagine your own thoughts, if one of your thoughts thought it was its own being, you'd start to have a lot of psychological problems. So we are seeing the psychological disintegration, the insanity of the divine mind begin to unfold, spawned from, birthed from Sophia's independent action, acting out of harmony from the unified mind. She cast him far from her, outside of the realm of the immortal beings, so they could not see him. She had created him in ignorance. And we're going to talk about this more a little later. And remember, we're also going to be putting this in perspective of Hyperianism. And we're going to see that the highest level of divine mind is a realm of pure symmetry. And so, excuse me for a moment, someone bought me a sandwich on YouTube, and I need to go get it. That was fast. 1 second. All right, I have returned. By the way, if you're watching the replay, I'm going to cut all this out. So that's why you should be subscribed and have notifications turned on, so you can be here when we do these lives, because weird stuff happens. I hang out in the chat, answer questions. It's great, and you miss all that in the replay. So you should definitely be subscribed so you can see all the cool stuff that gets cut. But anyway, let's continue. What I was saying here is that Sophia created this asymmetrical thought. And as we are going to see, especially with regard to Hyperianism, the highest levels of mind, it's a domain of pure frequency. It's a domain of pure symmetry. And the reason why that Yaldabaoth gets thrown out is because you can't have a asymmetrical thought existing within a realm of symmetry. And what we're actually going to see later is that Sophia herself does not exist now within the highest divine realm. She exists in a lower sphere that's sort of a intermediary area between mind and the lower realms, material realms. And we're going to see what this means mathematically in regard to Hyperianism, but we're not there yet, so let's continue. So, Yaldabaoth gets cast out of the divine realm because the divine realm is symmetrical, and you can't have an asymmetrical thought existing within a symmetrical realm. So Sophia surrounded him with a brilliant cloud, put a throne in the center of the cloud so that no one would see it. She named it Yaldabaoth. Yaldabaoth is the chief ruler. He took great power from his mother, left her, and moved away from his birthplace. He assumed command, created realms for himself with a brilliant flame that continues to exist even now. So now we have the birth of Yaldabaoth. Now we have this asymmetrical thought that has come into being, which is very different from the divine realm. Yaldabaoth united with thoughtlessness. Now, do you see what Yaldabaoth is going to end up doing is sort of a mimicry, an inversion of everything that's divine. So in the divine realms, you have different beings uniting with each other, but it's all about, it would be thoughtfulness. But Yaldabaoth is uniting with the thoughtlessness within him. Remember how the One generated the first concept? The Barbelo, Providence, the Mother. And, well, what Yaldabaoth is now doing is sort of generating things, but in an inverted way. So Yaldabaoth united with the thoughtlessness within him. He begot ruling authorities, archons, modeling them on realms above. The first is Athoth, the second is Harmus, called the Eye of Flame, the third is Kali Lumbri, the fourth is Yabel, the fifth is Adaneo, called Sebaoth, the sixth is Cain, called the Sun, the seventh is Abel, the eighth is Abrasine, the ninth is Yobel, the 10th is Armupiel, the 11th is Melchier Adanine, the 12th is Belias, who rules over the very depths of Hades. He made the first 7 rulers to reign in the 7 spheres of heaven. He made the next 5 rulers to reign in the 5 depths of the abyss. He shared a portion of his fire with them, but shared none of the power of light he had received from his mother. He is ignorant darkness. When the light mingled into the darkness shone. When darkness mixed with light, the light diminished. No longer light nor darkness, but dim. So now we have Yaldabaoth, which is a being of darkness, but he took some of his mother's divine power of light, and so he is no longer a dark being or a light being. He is a dim being. And you can even see in this depiction, next to Yaldabaoth, you have a moon and a star, or a moon and a sun. You have light and dark. But this is a very sort of infernal light and dark. This is a dimming. This is not a beyond good and evil. This is not a beyond good and evil Abraxian synthesis of light and dark. This is a dimming. The dim ruler has 3 names. Yaldabaoth is the first. Saklas is the second. Samael is the third. He is blasphemous through his thoughtlessness. He said, I am God, and there is no God but me. Now remember, the Gnostics viewed Yaldabaoth as being the Abrahamic God of the Bible. When you read the Bible, and it says God said, let there be light, and he created the world, to the Gnostics, that is the evil being Yaldabaoth. And when Yaldabaoth says, I am God, and there is no God but me, this is referring to where in the Bible, God says this many, many times, there is no God but me, thou shalt not have any gods except me, I am the one true God. So many times throughout the Bible, this is being said. So this is a clear allusion to that. He is blasphemous through his thoughtlessness. He said, I am God, and there is no God but me, since he didn't know where his power originated. See, the true God is the divine mind. All of us, what we are. But Yaldabaoth was ignorant of that. He was a thought, asymmetrical thought, born in darkness, who doesn't know his origin. His rulers created 7 authorities for themselves, and each of these authorities created 6 demons apiece. There came to be 365 demons altogether. So here we have one for each day. Here are the 7 authorities' names and physical forms. First, Athoth with a sheep's face. Second, Eloius with a donkey's face. Third, Astapheus with a hyena's face. Fourth, Yao with the face of a 7-headed snake. Fifth, Sabaoth, who has the face of a dragon. 6th, Adonin, who has the face of a monkey. 7th, Sabacios, with the face of a flame and fire. These are the 7 of the week. These authorities rule the world. So here we have, 365 demons altogether. You have one for every day, and then you have the 7 of the week. Do you see how the Gnostics are associating evil and demons with matter? We aren't even really getting into specific forms of matter yet, but just sort of the concept of temporality right now. Days of the year, of the week, time. But this very Gnostic theme that matter is evil. Yaldabaoth has many faces. And really, all these archons are the faces of Yaldabaoth. More than all that have been listed, so he can convey any face he wants to the seraphim around him. Yaldabaoth shared his fire with his seraphim, but gave them none of his pure light, although he ruled them by virtue and power and glory of the light he received from his mother. So, right now, at this stage, the archons are formed from the fire of Yaldabaoth. But he has not yet given them any power that he stole or took from his mother, the divine power, the divine light. Therefore, he called himself God and defied his place of origin. He united his thoughts' sevenfold powers with the authorities who accompanied him. He spoke and it happened. So, now he is going to share or give some of his life or light to the powers, to the archons. He named those sevenfold powers starting with the highest one. Goodness paired with the first, ethos. Providence paired with the second, Eloias. Divinity paired with the third, Astaphios. Lordship paired with the fourth, Yeo. Kingdom paired with the fifth, Sabaoth. Zeal paired with the sixth, Adonin. Understanding paired with the seventh, Sabatios. So, each has its own realm modeled on one of the higher realms. And each new name refers to a glory in the heavens, so that Yaldabaoth's demons might be destroyed. So basically what's happening here is that Yaldabaoth took divine power from its mother, Sophia, wisdom. And he created all these archons. And now with the sevenfold, the ones that were just named, he is sharing some of his light. And so we have now divine concept like goodness and understanding and zeal and divinity and providence being paired with some of these demons. So these demons have elements of the divine, which are positive things, mixed in with them. But each one ultimately, this divine power is ultimately going to overtake and destroy them. And that might sound kind of weird. And there's different ways to think about this. It's almost like, imagine being given a power, but it's so strong. Imagine you're given this power, but it's almost radioactive. So you're very, very powerful, but it will ultimately destroy you. And how we can understand this in terms of Hyperianism is that sort of all of us have the potential for divinity within us. Even the most evil, even the most vile. And so as we evolve and grow, ultimately that divinity, that potential will actualize and eradicate all of the asymmetry. So, like, again, imagine just horrible people. Just awful, racist, hateful, violent, homophobic people. They are very asymmetrical. But they have the seed, the potential for goodness, symmetry within them. And over the course of lifetimes and their monadic evolution, ultimately they will evolve into divine. Even though they're horrible right now, they will ultimately evolve into divine beings. This is what it means in a metaphorical way and interpreted in Hyperianism, that the light that they were given will ultimately destroy the demons. The demons' own names, given by Yaldabaoth, are mighty names, but the powers' names, reflecting the glory above, will bring about the demons' destruction and remove their power. That is why each has two names. Hopefully, I know this can be a point of confusion, but hopefully my explanation made sense. If it doesn't, let me know in the comments and I will explain it further. But ultimately, if that sounds confusing, just think about a person who would seem very demonic and have a powerful name. Powerful, right? Like hatred and whatnot is powerful. But ultimately, you have that seed or potential for goodness and divinity that through lifetimes will evolve. And we're using, remember, in Hyperianism, we're beyond good and evil. So this doesn't have anything to do with morality or doing good deeds. It has to do with evolution. It has to do with symmetry. It has to do with harmony. Remember, everything is mathematical. So in Hyperianism, there's no good and evil. There is just symmetry and asymmetry. Unity and what opposes unity. Evolution and involution. And people who engage in asymmetrical, taking apart, disunified activities, we can label that as evil. Even though that's a human label, we can label that as a tool, as a linguistic tool, we can call that evil. So you have these demonic beings, but that are also paired with light, that will ultimately be their undoing. For their demonic selves, their undoing. So, the demons' own names, given by Yaldabaoth, are mighty names. But the powers' names, reflecting the glory above, will bring about the demons' destruction and remove their power. That is why each has two names. And I hope you're seeing, again, if you're ever getting lost and you're like, what are these Gnostics talking about? Remember, the Gnostics were much more interested in explaining a philosophy through a story. So if sometimes the story doesn't really make sense, that's because the Gnostics didn't really care too much about making the story make sense. It was making a philosophy interpreted through symbols. So that's why when you read the Bible is a much more fluid story with characters that have very human-like attributes. It's like reading a fairy tale. There's, kings and queens and battles and things like this. But the Gnostics weren't really interested in creating an entertaining or gripping the story is gripping, but they weren't too concerned with the story's details, but rather putting forth a powerful philosophy in a way that people could understand. Demons being paired with two names, one being good, one being evil, and the good power ultimately triumphing. So, Yaldabaoth modeled his creation on the pattern of the original realms above him so that it might be like the indestructible realms. So this is clearly now, the Gnostics were very into Plato and Platonism. This is clearly Platonic ideas that we're talking about here. The divine realm is the Platonic realm of forms And the material realms is the realm of particulars and individuals that take part in the domain of forms. If you're not familiar with Platonic philosophy, basically it's like this. The domain of forms is like the domain of perfect blueprints, and the material reality is the realm of the things actually being made, but they're not as perfect as the blueprints. You ever get something from IKEA and you get the instructions, and the instructions is a perfect, beautiful, perfect table in the instructions, in the blueprints. But then you try and put it together and it comes out looking real shitty? That is the difference between the divine realm and the material realm. The divine realm is the realm of perfect blueprints, perfect pattern, and the material realm is modeled on the perfect realm, but is a corrupted, blemished version of it. And in Hyperianism, we understand this is the frequency domain and the space-time domain of the holos. So, Yaldabaoth modeled his creation on the pattern of the original realms above him so that it might be like the indestructible realms. But just like, your piece of IKEA furniture might be modeled on the instructions but might come out looking very crappy, we're going to see that Yaldabaoth's creation was not good. It was a blemished, horrendous version. And again, it says, not that he had ever seen the indestructible ones. Rather, the power in him, deriving from his mother, made him aware of the pattern of the cosmos above. So, Yaldabaoth never was... you remember, Yaldabaoth is an asymmetrical thought. So, Yaldabaoth is not in the divine indestructible realm. However, he has his mother's power in him. So in Yaldabaoth's mind, he has these patterns innately written upon his psyche, his unconscious. And we do as well. We do as well. When he gazed upon his creation surrounding him, he said to his host of demons, the ones who had come forth out of him. Remember, just like the one mind generated symmetrical thoughts, Yaldabaoth has generated now a multitude of archons, demonic, asymmetrical thoughts. So when he gazed upon his creation surrounding him, he said to his host of demons, the ones who had come forth out of him, I am a jealous God, and there is no God but me. Again, this is another allusion to the God of the Bible. In the Bible, God says, thou shalt not have any gods before me. I am a jealous God. This is, again, this is a common theme throughout the Old Testament, and this is why the Gnostics regarded Yaldabaoth as the God of the Bible, being this evil demonic being. This is why, but are you starting to see why this was banned from the Bible, by the way? This was the ultimate heresy, calling the God of the Bible a demonic, evil entity who is not the true God. So he said, I am a jealous God, and there is no God but me. But by doing this, he admitted to his demons that there is indeed another God. For if there were no other God, whom would he possibly be jealous of? Gnostics are brilliant. I don't agree with everything, but they are. Think about, when this was written and how much more intelligent it is compared to Orthodox religion. Brilliant. By doing this, he admitted to his demons that there is indeed another God, for if there were no other God, whom would he possibly be jealous of? Now we're going back to Sophia. His mother, Sophia, began to move back and forth because she had become aware that she now lacked light, for her brightness had dimmed. Since her consort had not approved of her actions, she grew darker. And this is brilliant, okay? I want you to notice. It says his mother began to move back and forth. This is the first time that we have any indication of spatiality, of movement. You see, Sophia moved. She walked back and forth. This is movement. This is distance. None of this has happened. None of the other beings in the divine realm moved back and forth. I know that sounds kind of trivial, but no, this is huge. This is a new element here. And why is she doing this? Why did she begin to move back and forth? Because she had become aware that she now lacked light, for her brightness had dimmed. She acted independently. So, this is, I want to explain what this means, but let me read a little more first before I really dive into this, because we're going to break this down, okay? In the darkness of ignorance, she began to forget. So we're having now, it's like Sophia is starting to lose some of her divinity, and this is fucking beautiful. And we're going to look at this mathematically and see exactly what this means. But just hold on. We're going to get to it. In the darkness of ignorance, she began to forget. She began to be ashamed. But she could not yet return above. Yet she began to move, and so she moved back and forth. And I'm getting excited about this because this is important. And you probably think, well, why is Morgue getting so excited about this? She's just moving back and forth. Why is this exciting? It's cool, okay? I'm going to show you why. Just hold your horses. It's going to be good, all right? So, but notice how they're emphasizing this, that she couldn't return above, and she began to move. She moved back and forth. This is going to be very important, and it's very cool. Stay with me. The arrogant one Yaldabaoth, the arrogant one removed power from his mother, for he was ignorant. He thought no one existed except for his mother. He saw the host of demons he had created, and he elevated himself above them. But when the mother realized that the miscarriage was so imperfect, she began to realize that her consort had not approved. She repented and wept furiously. So all the divine realms, the pleroma, the fullness, the pleroma is the divine realm, the realm of pure light. All right? All the divine realms, the realm of pure light, heard her repentant prayer. They sought the blessing from her. They sought blessing for her from the invisible virgin spirit. Remember, the invisible virgin spirit is the one. The divine mind. The one. The spirit consented. He poured the Holy Spirit over her, brought forth from the whole full realm. She was elevated above her son, Yaldabaoth, but she was not restored to her own original realm. She would remain in the 9th sphere until she was fully restored. Okay, let's break this down. Hope you're getting excited, because I'm getting excited, because this is some really cool shit here. What's going on here? So much to unpack. First of all, she is higher than Yaldabaoth. She is in the 9th sphere, but not restored to her original realm. So the 9th sphere is still, it's the lowest sphere of the divine realm, and it's like just before the lower realm begins. So it's sort of like an interface between the divine higher realms and the lower realms, including the realms of matter. So it's like this intermediary middle. It's still part of the divine realm, but it's the lowest part of the divine realm, and it's the interface between the two. That's where Sophia is. She can't go back to the divine realm yet. Why can't she go back to the divine realm yet? Because of all this asymmetry. And it is not until the full mind of the one is restored until she can return to the divine realm. And that entails each and every single one of us, as we'll see in the future. I'm getting ahead of myself here, but we as humans are divine sparks. We're all pieces of the divine mind trapped in matter. And so it's not until all of humanity is liberated from matter and returns and integrates back into the divine mind and becomes God, until we all become God, that is when Sophia can return to her highest, to the sphere she originated from. Now, we got to really break this down now in terms of Hyperianism to really understand what's going on. So, quick crash course for those who are new. All right, so take a look at this. This in Hyperianism is the source formula. Remember, in Hyperianism, everything is mind, everything is math, everything is frequency. Mind, mathematics, frequency, these are all words for the same thing. In Hyperianism, the source formula is the one equation that describes all reality. And that equation results in what you're seeing here. I want you, and this is all going to tie together. This has to do with what we were just talking about, and it's going to be awesome, and you're going to love it. You better. So, notice a few different things here, all right? First of all, I want you to notice in the corner this green circle, okay? So in the corner, notice there's a circle, and basically from this circle, there are two waves, a sinusoid and a cosine, a sine and a cosine, being generated. So this right here is the visual expression of the source formula, which is e to the ix equals cosine x plus I sine x. But you don't need to worry about that. All you need to know is that the formula for existence describes a circle and frequency. And all you have to know is that a circle and waves are two ways of looking at the same information. A circle equals two sinusoidal waves. They are the same thing. Just like how you can have 2 equals 1 plus 1, you can either look at the 2 side, or you can look on the other side of the equal sign and look at the 1 plus 1 side. 2 equals 1 plus 1. A circle equals 2 waves, okay? So a circle is 2 waves. This is the source formula. This is how we can begin to understand all of reality. Okay, if you don't really know what I'm talking about, don't worry. Just go with it intuitively for now. You need to see it all together. So keep that in mind. Now we're going to zoom in and take a look at just the circle part. Okay, so I want you to notice how there is a point. You know, you can see this line traveling around a circle. Now, for every radius, there are waves associated with that radius. Okay? So I want you to notice how we can have, notice there is an axis, the cross. And you can have the radius lie along that one of those axes. Or you can have it in between. Okay? So look, if you notice, the blue radius can be in between the axes, or it can be directly on the axes, right? It can be directly on, or it can be in between. And each one of these possible positions are associated with sinusoidal waves. Now, the sinusoidal waves that are associated with the axes, with the cross, are part of the pure mind. Pure mind. Pure frequency. The areas in between the axes is still mind, however, it is not pure. You could say that it is contaminated or it is fractured. Because what we have done is we have introduced phase relations into the waves. And by introducing phase relations, this is how we're going to generate asymmetry. Why is this? If you look at this radius, okay, notice that this radius now is associated with, it forms a triangle, okay? Notice there are two legs of the triangle. There is one here, and then one here, okay? When the radius lies directly on the axes, it does not form a triangle. When it lies in between the axes, it does form a triangle. These legs of that triangle are also associated with waves, but these are partial waves, lesser waves. They are curtailed waves. And these lesser partial waves, I'm trying not to get too technical, but they travel at a lesser velocity, less than light speed. And ultimately, these lesser waves are what generate the realm of matter. So, when the radius lies on an axis, this is pure mind. It has no associated legs, meaning it has no associated waves that will result in matter. It's pure mind. When a radius is in between in the interaxial positions, it now is associated with legs of a Pythagorean triangle, and these are associated with lesser waves. So this interaxial position is still mind, but it is not pure. It has within it the potential to generate these lesser waves that ultimately create matter. So this position, this intermediate position, is still mind, but it's impure, contaminated, because it contains within it this potential to project lesser waves that will go on to create matter. Now, why are we talking about all this? Because the axial positions, the pure mind, that is the divine, the highest divine pure realm. Sophia exists now in still the divine realm, but she has moved back and forth. She is exhibiting phase. She has gone out of phase from the rest of the mind. It's still in the divine mind, but it's impure. It contains the possible projection of lesser waves that will create matter. Keep all that in mind, and now see if you can connect the dots. When we read that she was elevated above her son, remember, this interaxial waves generates lesser waves. It is in a position higher and above. She was elevated above her son, but she was not restored to her own original realm. She can't be. She will remain in the ninth sphere until she was fully restored. Remember, the ninth sphere, that's the lowest part of the divine realm. It's an interface between the divine realm and the lesser realms. Just as here we have the hypotenuse, the radius here, which is mind, but the projection, the legs, which are the lesser waves. And so, this is what it means when his mother began to move back and forth, because she had become aware that she now lacked light. Her brightness had dimmed. In the darkness of her ignorance, she began to forget. She began to be ashamed, but she could not yet return above. Yet she began to move. She exhibited phase relations. So she moved back and forth. All right, so now we have the interaxial positions here that generate the lower forms. She was elevated above her sun, above the projections, but she was not restored to her original realm. She would remain in the ninth sphere until she was fully restored. So basically, what happens is when we existed before space and time in the realm of pure mind, there were no interaxial waves. Everything were what existed as axial waves, pure, perfect mind. When orthogonality, when non-orthogonal phase relations were brought into the picture, this resulted in projections of spatial and temporal waves, lesser waves, curtailed waves, imperfect waves, you could call them. And this generating of interaxial waves is what gives birth to the material realm. And the pure, perfect divine mind won't be restored until the non-orthogonal waves, the matter waves, are eliminated. So it's not until matter is gone that we will have these interaxial waves once again become pure mind. Pure mind. Do you see? This is a state of matter, because we have the projections, that triangle, but when it lies directly on an axis, you can see that matter vanishes. So it's not until all humanity realizes their divinity, all matter is dissolved, that the realm of divine mind will be restored, that wisdom will be fully actualized once again. Do you see how the divine mind of God, wisdom fell, and from the falling of wisdom, all of this non-orthogonality was generated. And once we restore the wisdom that is innate in all of humanity, because we all have that connection, then we will be restored once again to a position of divine mind, the pleroma, perfection, absolute perfection. So, there is a lot to unpack here, but I hope that that makes sense and that you are excited about it as I am. If you are new to Hyperianism and you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, remember, that was just such a short glimpse of what we talked about in Hyperianism. If you want to understand the math better, look up Ontological Mathematics, The Science of the Future. That's one of the books that I wrote on it. The Hyperion Source is a YouTube channel that also did a video series on it, to begin to start to understand these concepts, okay? And so what we are going to talk about next week is, we talked about today the birth of Yaldabaoth and how that related to Sophia. Next week, we are going to talk about how humanity enters into the picture, and Yaldabaoth's enslavement and entrapment of humanity in the so-called paradise, the so-called Garden of Eden. But we're going to see it's nothing like you imagine. We're going to get into how to escape the material realm and everything associated with that. I want to give a shout out to all the supporters on Patreon, especially White Rabbit, John, Susan, and G1, and everyone else who supports. Supporting on Patreon really helps out because there's so much censorship and deplatforming going on. If YouTube or Facebook ever have a fit about my content, Patreon ensures that I can keep making videos, which is very good. So thank you guys for all your support. It means the world to me. And you also get access to our secret weekly live streams every single week. So if you want to support, consider doing so, and you'll get access to our weekly secret live streams.